So what are some of the roles that got somebody on this list? Abbesses or prioresses of large institutions who were noted for being the heads of those institutions. Hilda would be an example. Church or denominational leaders, interestingly enough, there's 3 denominations that were primarily came into existence in the United States, and they were all either started by or built by women. Church reformers, and that's true on both the Catholic side and the Protestant side. Certainly Catherine of Siena comes to mind as somebody who didn't mind telling the Pope, giving him what for. Composers, we have at least one. I have Fanny Crosby. I can't remember if I have any other composers. Doctors of the Church. I have been saying for years in my class that there were 3 women. There are now 4. Another one was added several years ago. So all 4 of them are in our discussion. Educators. Mary Seton would be an example of that. She started the first Catholic parochial school in Baltimore, and eventually that became the parochial school system in the United States. Founders of religious orders, denominations, churches, or monasteries. There's actually quite a few women who started any of those things, including Teresa of Avila and Clare of Assisi. Humanitarians, actually number 1 on our list, is most notable humanitarian, although she also founded a religious order. Military leaders, there's a lot of women who are military leaders. Joan d'Arc is a good example of one that was. Prophets, visionaries, and mystics, as I said, this would all be on the Roman Catholic side. In the movie The Messenger, which is about Joan of Arc, it is not presented as in a very religious sense. They basically portray her as being schizophrenic and hears voices and whatnot. But she would certainly fit in as visionary mystic as well as a military leader. Martyrs, or risk themselves to save others. There's quite a few of those. The first one we're going to talk about, Saint Perpetua, was actually an early Christian martyr. And theologians and scholars, that somewhat goes along with the doctrines of the church, but there's several variants. So we'll do a quick overview of what we're going to see in here. So number 1, I actually had a hard time deciding between these 2. I ended up with Mother Teresa just because of the worldwide reach of the ministry. Founder and Superior General of the Missionaries of Charity, so she did indeed found a religious order. Nobel Prize winner, and we all know about her ministry in the Calcutta ghettos. Catherine of Siena, number 2, is actually a pretty impressive person. A doctor of the church, a mystic, an author, a reformer, a papal ambassador, and I particularly like her because she called for a new crusade during her lifetime. Saint Teresa of Avila, also a doctor of the church, also a mystic, author, and the founder of, I think it was 21 monasteries and convents, and that's why she's on there. Saint Clare of Assisi, follower of Francis of Assisi, and she founded the Poor Clares, which still exists today. Queen Elizabeth I, savior of Protestantism in England, the leader of the Spanish Armada, which of course was headed by Catholics, was defeated. Amy Semple McPherson, she didn't found Pentecostalism, but she made it a worldwide phenomenon. St. Bridget of Sweden founded the Bridgetines. She was also an author and a church reformer. Fanny Crosby wrote over 8,000 hymns. Probably 20 of them are still sung with some regularity today. St. Bridget of Ireland founded the convent of Kildare. May have had the power of a bishop and is known as the patroness of Ireland. And she's an interesting case because even the Catholic Encyclopedia of all sources has to grudgingly admit that she which means she would have the power of a bishop. Joan of Arc, the Maid of Orleans, helped decide the 100 Years' War in favor of France. Harriet Beecher Stowe personally started the American Civil War and ended slavery in the United States. Lincoln himself, when he met at the White House, said, "Oh, you're the little lady that started all of this."
I think what she did was bring some things to light.
Anne Hutchinson, expelled from the Massachusetts Bay Colony for publicly disagreeing with the settlement elders, and helped start the settlement in Rhode Island. But the main reason she was expelled was because she was uppity.
She was a what?
She was uppity.
Uppity.
Actually, she had the nerve to disagree.
I was going to say, that would be nobody. She had an opinion, still have.
Phoebe Palmer would be the second of our women who started Protestant denominations. She's known as the mother of the Holiness Movement. The Holiness Movement was one of the precursors of the Pentecostals, but we still have holiness churches today. A big one, the biggest one is probably the Church of the Nazarene. Deborah and I went on vacation several years ago in South Alabama, and we went down a stretch in a rural area, and every mile there would be a holiness church on the corner, and sometimes there were holiness churches across the street from each other. So that was-
Just different names, but they were teeny. They were all over the place.
So that was kind of cool. Saint Teresa of Lisieux is a doctor of the church, author of an autobiography called The Story of a Soul, which is probably what she's most famous for. She's an interesting figure. She died from tuberculosis when she was 26, I think, so she wasn't around that long. Hilda of Whitby founded Whitby Abbey in England in 663, but the reason that she's really on here is because Whitby Abbey hosted the Synod of Whitby, where the Irish form of the tonsure, the Irish dating of Easter and all that was crushed under the boot of Rome. Heloise, I've never been able to write a course to get Eloise and Abelard, and when I finally did, we wanted to make sure we had some passion and romance in this course, and indeed we were able to do so. Scholar, writer, prioress, but the reason we know her today is because of her torrid love affair with scholar, writer, abbot, Peter Abelard, and we will lovingly look at some of the letters they exchanged with each other. I mean, it was really a bizarre situation because they were actually both married. She was the prioress of the convent. He was the abbot of a monastery, and they were married, and they were exchanging, oh, I miss you so much, letters with each other. It's really an astonishing story, which I'm looking forward to recount. Also, I could have mentioned the same thing in Amy Semple McPherson. There's a hint of scandal there that needs to be discussed. Hildegard of Bingen is our most recent doctor of the church. She's kind of interesting too. Writer, composer, Christian mystic, and Benedictine abbess. And she had as her, one of the people who sort of supported her along the way was Bernard of Clairvaux, which she was kind of unknown and wasn't sure if she should publish the revelation she was having. Bernard of Clairvaux took her under his wing, and suddenly it was a bestseller all over.
Where's Benjamin? Where's Benjamin? No, where is it?
In Germany.
Okay.
Mother Ann Lee, founder of the Shakers, so this would be our third woman in the United States who founded a religious order. The Shakers came out of the Quakers. Mother Ann Lee was a very severe woman, thought that sex was the root of all evil, and founded a religious order that didn't allow sex. And not surprisingly, as we know from the birds and bees, eventually it died out.
They ran out of little orphan
They great furniture.
They did make great furniture.
Catherine Mumford Booth, often referred to as the mother of the Salvation Army. And she was actually married to one of the people who formed it. Margaret Fell, often known as the mother of Quakerism, and was married to a man who was generally considered as the founder of Quakerism. Saint Scholastica established the first Benedictine convent, but is better known as being the twin sister of Saint Benedict and Lucia, and for the series of miracles which occurred surrounding her death. Elizabeth Ann Seton, I said Mary Seton earlier, my fault. Elizabeth Ann Seton founded the first free Catholic school in America, and that really was the start of the Catholic parochial school system. And this is one that I actually have a minor amount of connection with, because I remember visiting her house in Baltimore when she was still under consideration for the sainthood. You could take a walking tour of the area where she used to live in Baltimore, and I did all of that. Clotilda helped convert France to Christianity, a builder of churches and monasteries, and then Saint Perpetua, a 3rd century Christian martyr. So that's our list. I think it's fairly evenly split between Protestants and Catholics and those different categories